We're going to learn about blended learning today. I want you to understand what blended learning looks like in a classroom, what research and practice with tools for creating a blended learning environment, create some lessons to support blended learning in your future classroom, and collaborate and share ideas today and continue to explore and share in the future. I need you to go to this Symbaloo link that I have here, and you'll be clicking on the box that looks like a kind of a jester's hat. And I want you to click on there, and what you'll do is click on it and create a sticky note, put your name on it, and tell me before we get started, what is blended learning to you? What do you think that looks like? What would it look like in your classroom? So you're thinking about what blended learning means and what does it look like in your classroom. So if you'll just pause the video here and go to that Symbaloo link, then you'll be able to answer those questions, and then after you've paused the video, just come back when you're done. The next thing I'm going to have you do is you're going to go to this bit.ly link, and you're going to watch an Edpuzzle video, which we created our accounts in class last time. And this is going to explain to you the model that most people are looking for blended learning and kind of what the Institute wants to tell you blended learning looks like. So again, if you'll pause the video and go and watch this, and remember you'll have questions to answer as you're watching the video. I have a couple more videos from the Clayton Christensen Institute, which is who is doing this part on blended learning. So I've given you the links up here. Again, if you'll just pause, these will be something that'll just teach you a little bit more about what blended learning looks like. One of the things that I think we can see in our classroom after you've watched the videos is what's called station rotation. And I think in the past we've thought about stations in our classroom as a place where kids just go and do things. Maybe we're with a reading group at elementary level and our kids are over in one corner doing math facts flashcards, and one kid is at a reading center reading books. But station rotation, when you think about blended learning, it's within a course or subject. So we're all doing math, or we're all doing reading or science, and it's on a fixed schedule. So every day from 9 to 10, we're in station rotation. And at least one station is an online learning station, and the others might include activities such as small group instruction, like I said, reading instruction. You might see full class instruction, group projects, individual tutoring, and paper and pencil assignments. But the most important part of station rotation is that the kids are not just doing something and you don't know if they're getting the concept. And I think sometimes when we put kids in stations, we just want to work with our group, and we're just needing an activity for them to do, but we have no way to measure if they're making progress. And we're talking about blended learning, we're talking about meeting everyone's needs. And so if we just stick kids over here on an iPad to play chicken coop, we're really not knowing if they're understanding. So we have to make sure that the activities are something that's at their level and something that's progressing them towards the learning target. And we hear a lot about flipped and blended learning, and I kind of did a little flipped classroom model with you when I had you watch that video. Something that I could do with my students in blended learning, but also sometimes in flipped. I let you learn that at home. I gave you questions, and when you come to class, I'd know if you were ready to move on to the concept or not. So notice that blended learning, I give you time to reflect, which we're doing a lot of reflection in this activity. I'm empowering everybody to participate and be visible, so I have to know what you're learning if we're doing the blended learning model. And I have to enable the instructor to provide feedback anywhere, anytime. So even though we're in an online course, I can get on here and see what you're doing through my Edpuzzle to make sure that you answered the questions and understood what you were doing. On flipped instruction, it enables instructors to help students who are struggling. It allows you to pause and rewind the video, which we're doing a little bit of that here because I'm asking you to pause and go back and do some things. And I'm empowering the students and instructors to have frequent and substantial interactions. So the difference really between flipped and blended is At Flipped, I'm giving you the whole class something to do at home most of the time, just some type of lecture, so that when you come back the next day, I know whether you've learned it or not. With the blended model, I'm giving you time to reflect, and I'm empowering you to participate, and I'm making sure that all students are understanding whether I'm giving you an online assignment or we're working in groups. So those are kind of and they're interchangeable things, and we have to understand the difference between that flipped and blended learning model. What I want you to do now is, has your definition of blended learning changed? How you might implement it, is it different than it was before? If you can go back to that Padlet on the Symbaloo and go ahead and put in your new thinking, just pause the video here. You have to choose the correct model, and you have to ask questions of yourself when you're starting to look at blended and flipped learning models in your classroom. You know, what problem are we trying to solve? What is the end product we want our students to have? What's the content and learning objective? What do we want students to control? What do we want the primary role of the teacher to be? And what does the physical space look like? And how many devices do I have available? And how can I monitor those devices to make sure students are actually getting the content? So these are questions that you start to ask yourself as you start to go through the blended learning model. So for instance, when I was teaching this, and I did this with a group of teachers, some people watched a video independently and answered questions. They each watched the video with headset on, but I knew whether they were getting the answers correct because I was monitoring. I had a group design the physical space of their learning environment, so I know exactly what they think blended learning would look like in their classroom. And then another group actually sat down and discussed their blended learning ideas with me. So this is an example of how in professional development I could model what blended learning would look like for my staff. I have another video for you to watch, so if you click on and go to this video, you'll be able to watch a TED Ed video. And again, this is another way where you're watching the video and you'll be answering questions at the end, so I'll know that you're understanding the blended learning model. So again, pause the video, go ahead and go to this site and watch that video for me and answer the questions that it asks you. Now that you've kind of had an idea of what blended learning is, can you think of a unit or lesson where you could kind of begin to teach blended learning in the classroom? Think of your ideas, think of the challenges that you might face in implemented blended learning in a classroom, and what are you kind of excited to try and implement, and what resources do you think you would need? Kind of keep a notes of all these things, and we'll discuss in class, and I'll also have a couple of discussion questions on discussion board for you based around these things as well. I left you that link to that Symbaloo, and this is where all the resources are. There are resources that you can use about how to, all the blended learning videos are there for you. Moby Max is there. Other resources that you could use in your classroom. I want you to explore the resources on the Symbaloo, and what you're going to do for your Weebly webpage this week is talk about how you could use 2 of these resources in your classroom to get started with blended learning. How would you track students' creation, and how would you keep them on track, and how would you keep track of their progress as you're using these resources? So go ahead and click on them, get familiar with them. Newslia is in there. Wonderopolis are great reading resources. There's learning management systems in here. I gave you a link to Padlet, which you played with a little bit. Edpuzzle as well as TED Ed are on there. There's some resources, CK12, and some places where you can get some actual resources. A link to Symbaloo, which is what we've been using in class a lot. And so No Red Ink is a great English, but probably at the secondary level. So again, play with the resources. You'll be I have an assignment for you based on these resources that you'll see as you get towards the end of the video. I'm going to give you some time now, obviously, to think about how to use these resources in your classroom, look at the resources in the videos, and put those on your web page. Good luck, guys. If you have questions, please remember to ask. Sweet!